Okay, in this lesson, we are going to look at using notes of the seventh chord to add to our melodies to create a bit more flavor. So, we're not going to use the seventh chord per se, but we're going to use the notes that are found in the seventh chord to create melodies with. So, the notes of the seventh chord, they're exactly the same as basically the triads that we used before, but we just add another note on top of it, so a fourth note or the seventh interval on top of the chord to, I guess, to give us some extra notes to use. So, we're going to start off by doing what we normally do or what we have done for the last few tracks. I'm just going to deactivate the last track that we did. I'm going to insert a new MIDI track underneath the chord track that we did. I'm going to copy the chords and I'm going to paste them onto a new MIDI track. Now, for this example, what I'm going to do is just move the chords back into root position. So bear with me for a second while I do that. Okay, so our chords are now back in root position. So let's have a look at adding the seventh interval to each chord. So in a chord, we have our first, third, and fifth. Okay, we want to add our seventh interval on top of that. So I guess the seventh interval of C minor is a B flat to make it a C minor 7. The seventh interval of the A flat major is a G. The seventh interval on top of an F minor is an E flat to make it an F minor 7. And the seventh interval on top of a, I guess, B flat major in this key anyway is going to be an A flat. And that makes this chord a dominant seventh chord. So instead of a major minor, we've got a dominant seventh chord. Now, this isn't typically used very often in electronic dance music. So we'll probably avoid using the seventh note for this chord when we get to it because it doesn't really work in this genre. It's more of something that you use in jazz or traditional harmony styles, and not so much in electronic dance music. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're just going to deactivate these notes because we just use these notes as a guide, and I'm going to delete this one so we don't use the seventh note for that chord. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and make a melody, but first I'm going to set the grid to 16th notes, okay, just so we have the ability to syncopate our notes a bit more. And I'm going to go through and click through or click in a melody that's going to make use of the seventh note of each chord. So I'm going to start with a C, and then I'm going to go down to the B flat. So the B flat is the seventh note of the C minor 7. E flat's part of the chord, so I'll put that in next. Then I'll go back to the C, I reckon. And then I'm going to come up to the G, which is the fifth interval of the chord. So again, even though if we look down here, our seventh interval is above the chord, you can just go down to the seventh interval below if you want to as well. While we're here, I'm going to add a massive track onto this track so you can hear it. And let's hear what we've done so far. All right, that's quite high up the octave, so I might bring it down just a little bit. So I just highlighted the notes there and pressed shift down, and that's brought it down the octave for me. Cool, that's our first bar. Next one, we've got the A flat major chord. So I'm going to use A flat, and then I'm going to come back to the G, and that's the seventh note of that chord, so the seventh interval there. And it kind of works well because we used a G previously. I'm going to come down and make an E flat here, then on to a C down here, and I reckon we'll finish on the E flat. So if we look at our composition so far, or our melody so far, we've used a B flat and we've used this G here. They are our seventh notes of the chords or the separate chords. So we've used those to introduce some flavor. We're not going overboard with them. We're not using the seventh interval for every note. Because if we did that, it would kind of lose its kind of, I guess, harmonic center. So we're just using it for flavor because we know that chord harmonizes with the root note of each chord. So let's do another one here. Let's go with A flat. And then I'm going to do a couple Fs because we're using the F minor chord. And then I'm going to come back to the A flat. I might do something a bit different rhythmically here. We might use quavers, so a half of a full beat. And I'm going to come down to the E flat there because that's the seventh note of the chord there. And then again, we talked about this before, because the B flat, if we add the A flat on top, it makes it a dominant seventh chord. Doesn't really work in this genre of music. So we're just going to use B flat major chords here. So I'm just going to come down to D, and I'm going to use a very similar rhythm to what we did before in this bar here. I'm just going to use pretty much the exact same rhythm. So what I'll do is I'll add a F here, and then we use quavers to finish off with. And I'm going to come down to the B flat. And what's kind of cool about this, I guess, I know the B flat is part of the diatonic, one of the diatonic notes of this chord, but the B flat is also the 7th of the C. So when it loops back, it kind of feels like it's going from the 7th note back to the C as well. Let's have a listen to what we come up with, and yeah, we'll move forward. So there you have it. We've used some chord notes. We've also used some 7th notes. We've used some syncopation. So again, just some other ways to create, I guess, richer melodies or more interesting melodies. Now, if you don't understand 7th chords, don't stress. We'll do some more theory on this later on. So if you're still only capable of using chord notes to create melodies, that's fine. Keep continuing with that. Watch through the videos though, and make sure you're just picking up any tips along the way, because there'll be some stuff mentioned that you might not pick up in other videos. So just make sure you're watching through. Even if the theoretical side of it doesn't make sense, you'll still pick up some good, I guess, Ableton techniques or production techniques that you'll need going forward. All right, a couple lessons to go in this topic, so we'll move forward.